The night was colder than usual, and the wind moved through the wooden walls of the village with a low whistle. The people gathered near the cellar, their voices sharp and full of fear. At the center of their anger was a thin alien widow, her wrists tied with rough rope, her face hidden under a dirty sack. "She's crazy," one villager whispered. "Don't listen to her words. They will bring curses on us all." Another man spat on the ground. "She should have left with her dead husband. She brings nothing but trouble." The widow made no sound. Her body shook with weakness, hunger, and shame. For days they had dragged her to the dark cellar, left her with no food, and called her insane. She wanted to scream, but the sack cut her breath and turned her words into muffled gasps. Far away, near the edge of the crowd, stood a human traveler. He had come to the village searching for shelter, but what he found was something else. His eyes followed the widow and his chest tightened. He could not understand their cruelty. Why would they do this to a helpless woman? The elder of the village raised his staff, his voice deep. "Do not pity her. She speaks of shadows that do not exist. She says she sees things in the dark. She frightens our children with her madness. She must be silenced until her spirit is broken." The villagers nodded, some in fear, some in agreement. The cellar door opened with a loud creak. They pushed the widow inside, the sack still tight on her head. The door slammed shut, the iron lock clicked, and silence swallowed her cries. The human traveler felt the weight in his chest grow heavier. He had seen cruelty before, but this felt different. There was no proof of madness in her, only despair. He asked one of the men standing guard, "Why do you starve her? What crime has she done?" The guard's face twisted in suspicion. "Stranger, don't get close to her. She is touched by something evil. She lost her husband in the war, and since then she has spoken of things that walk at night. Beasts none of us can see. She is cursed, and if you listen to her, you will be cursed too." The human shook his head. His instincts whispered otherwise, something in her weak form, something in her silence felt honest, not mad. He turned away before the guard could ask more. But his mind would not rest inside the cellar. The widow sat on the cold stone floor. Her arms ached from the ropes, her stomach twisted in hunger. She tried to speak through the sack, her voice trembling. "They don't believe me. They don't believe the danger." Her words died into the thick silence. Her memory burned like fire. She saw again the night when her husband was taken by the unseen shadows. He had fought bravely, but the beast had dragged him into the dark. She had cried for help, but no one came. Now they called her insane, they called her cursed. She wanted only to protect them, but instead they punished her. Outside, the moon rose higher, silver light spilling across the village roofs. The human traveler could not sleep. The whispers of the villagers echoed in his ears, but stronger than them was the soft memory of the widow's shivering frame. He walked slowly toward the cellar when no one watched. His boots touched the damp earth, his heart heavy with doubt. He placed his hand on the cold iron lock. From within, he thought he heard faint movement. A soft whisper, maybe a plea. His breath caught for a moment. He almost opened the door, but footsteps behind made him step back into the shadows. 2 guards walked past, laughing about her madness and how she would break soon. The human clenched his jaw. Something was not right. He knew cruelty when he saw it. He had lived through war and seen men lose their minds. But the widow's silence was not madness, it was truth locked away. The question burned in his mind. What truth were they trying so hard to bury? The night stretched on. The widow sat in her prison. The human sat by the fire with restless thoughts. The villagers slept in uneasy peace, but in the forest, something else moved. Unseen, silent, glowing eyes watching the small village from the trees. And though no one listened, the widow's warnings were not madness. They were prophecy waiting to unfold. The morning sun rose slowly over the mountains, its light spilling across the village roofs. Smoke lifted from chimneys, and the smell of baked grain filled the air. Yet behind all the ordinary peace, the memory of the cellar lingered in the human traveler's mind. He could not forget the image of the alien widow bound and hidden under a sack. The villagers moved about their work with stiff faces. Some avoided his eyes, while others gave him cautious stares. To them, he was only a stranger passing through. He had no right to ask questions, and yet he could not remain silent. The voice inside him urged, what if she was telling the truth? At the water well, he approached an old woman. She was drawing a heavy bucket and humming a nervous tune. "Grandmother," he asked softly, "why do you all fear her so much? She is just a widow. What danger can she bring? The old woman's eyes flicked around nervously. You are not from here. You don't know the signs. She speaks of things in the dark. She frightens the children. She whispers about her dead husband as if he still walks among us. She is not right in the head, the human frowned. Or maybe she has seen something you do not wish to face. The old woman's hand trembled. She pulled her bucket quickly and hurried away, leaving him with only silence and doubt. Later, as he passed near her abandoned hut, his steps slowed, the roof sagged, and the door hung open. Inside, dust floated like tiny stars. On a broken shelf sat a child's small toy, an animal carved from wood. Its eyes scratched, its paint faded. He bent down and picked it up. His heart tightened. Was this her child's? Did she once have a family here before they turned against her? A sudden voice startled him. Stranger! Leave that place, it was the village elder, his staff planted firmly in the dirt. His eyes burned with warning. She is cursed. Her husband's death drove her mad, and we cannot allow her lies to spread. Do not pity her if you value your own safety. You will stay far from her. The human stood tall. Is it madness to grieve? Is it madness to warn of danger? The elder's lips curled. She poisons minds with fear. Already she claimed to see beasts in the woods, glowing eyes that no one else has seen. She weakens the spirit of the people, and you, outsider, should remember this. If you feed her lies, you share her curse. With that, the elder turned away, leaving the human with a heavier heart than before. That night the wind howled stronger. The human lay awake in the small room the villagers had given him. He turned again and again on his straw bed, his thoughts returning to the cellar. He remembered her trembling frame, the faint whisper under the sack. The memory refused to let him rest. Finally he rose and stepped outside. The moon lit the village with pale light. The guards at the cellar laughed quietly, their words drifting through the air. She will break soon, one said. She has not eaten for days. Mad ones do not need food, the other answered with a grin. She will talk to her shadows until she fades. It will be over quickly. The human clenched his fists. His jaw tightened. The cruelty of their words filled him with anger. He walked away before they could see his expression. His steps carried him again toward her hut, something pulling him there like an unseen force. He sat near the broken doorway, the toy still resting in his hand. He tried to imagine her life, her husband alive, her child laughing, her house once filled with warmth, how quickly it had turned to ashes, how easily her people had turned their backs. When the wind shifted, he thought he heard something. A faint cry carried from the cellar. He froze, listening carefully. The sound was weak, almost like a breath. But it carried pain, it carried truth. The human stood, his decision shaking his heart. He could not turn away any longer. Tomorrow he would bring her water, even if it meant angering the guards. He would hear her words for himself. He would decide with his own mind if she was truly insane, or if the villagers were hiding from a truth too dark to face. In the forest beyond the village, the branches stirred. A pair of glowing eyes blinked among the trees. Watching, waiting, silent as death, they moved deeper into the shadows, unseen by all but one who had already been silenced. And so the human's doubt grew heavier, pulling him into a path he could no longer escape. A path where kindness would clash with fear, and truth would reveal itself in the darkness. The night was quiet when the human finally walked toward the cellar. The guards had gone to drink near the fire, their laughter echoing far away. The air was heavy with smoke and cold wind. His steps were slow, careful, but his heart pounded like drums. He reached the iron door, his hand brushing against the rusted lock. For a long moment he hesitated. His mind whispered warnings. If the villagers saw him, they would call him cursed too. Yet his chest ached with a weight he could not ignore. Slowly, he pushed the door open, its hinges groaning in protest. Inside the cellar, the darkness swallowed him. The smell of damp stone and dust filled his nose. At first he saw nothing. Then his eyes caught a faint shape in the corner. The alien widow, thin and weak, ropes cutting into her arms. The dirty sack still covering her head. He knelt beside her, whispering softly, "I mean no harm. I came to listen." His fingers worked quickly to untie the ropes. Her body trembled at his touch, afraid at first, but too weak to resist. He loosened the sack and pulled it from her head. Her face was pale, marked with bruises. Her eyes, though dim with exhaustion, shone with a strange fire. She coughed as air rushed into her lungs, her lips dry and cracked. "Why?" she whispered, her voice thin. Why do you risk yourself? The human answered gently, because I don't believe you are mad. Tell me your truth, widow, let me hear it. Tears welled in her eyes, rolling down her cheeks as she struggled to speak. For a long moment she sat in silence, gathering the strength of her broken heart. Then slowly her story poured out. My husband, she began, her voice shaking, was a soldier. He fought in the border wars. He was brave, too brave for his own safety. One night he did not return. I searched for him. I followed the tracks into the forest. That was when I saw them. Her eyes drifted toward the ceiling, as if she could see the memory painted there. Glowing eyes moving in the dark. Shadows that shifted and breathed, they dragged him into the night. I screamed, I begged for help, but no one came. When I returned to the village, they did not believe me. They said grief had broken my mind. They said I was cursed. The human's chest tightened. He whispered, and your child? Her hands clenched, her whole body trembling. My daughter. She was young, she believed me. She saw them too, but when she spoke, the villagers grew afraid. They silenced her. They took her from me. They said she was poisoned by my madness. They locked her away, and I never saw her again. Her voice cracked, her shoulders shaking as she sobbed. They think I am dangerous because I remember, because I refuse to forget what I saw. They call me liar, they starve me, they wish me dead. But I know the shadows are real. I know they are coming. The human's heart burned with anger at the cruelty of the villagers. Yet there was more, something deeper in her eyes. Something that was not just grief, he asked carefully. What did you see in those shadows? What are they? She leaned closer, her whisper sharp like broken glass. Hunters not of this world, they feed on silence and fear. They move when the night is darkest. They steal the strongest first, then the weak. They wait until no one believes, until the warnings are forgotten. Then they strike and they are patient. Always patient. The cellar walls seemed colder as her words filled the air. The human glanced toward the door. Half expecting glowing eyes to already be watching, he whispered, Why only you? Why not others? Her lips trembled. Because I see what others refuse to see. My bloodline has always seen what hides in shadow. My grandmother spoke of them too, but she was cast out like me. The villagers fear truth more than lies, and so they choose blindness. Silence fell heavy. Her breath came in short gasps. She was weak, her body broken from hunger. The human took out a small flask of water from his coat and pressed it to her lips. She drank greedily, tears mixing with the drops. You believe me, she whispered, hope flickering in her voice. Don't you? The human did not answer at once. His mind was torn between doubt and compassion. But deep in his heart, the fire of her words burned too bright to be ignored. I believe something is out there, he said quietly. And I believe you are not mad. The widow's eyes closed for a moment, as if relief gave her strength. Then you must be careful, stranger. The night hides more than the villagers will ever admit, and when the eyes return, no one will be safe. Her warning lingered in the air like a curse. The human felt the weight of her story settle inside him. Heavy and undeniable, he had come only seeking shelter. But now he stood on the edge of something far darker. Outside, the forest stirred. The glowing eyes blinked once more among the trees. Unseen by all but her memory, the hunters were patient, and their time was near. The next day, the human walked through the village with heavy thoughts. The widow's words clung to him like cold chains. He could still hear her broken voice whispering about glowing eyes and hunters that waited in the dark. He had wanted to believe it was only grief, yet something inside him refused to dismiss her story. As the morning passed, unease stirred in the village. A farmer shouted near the livestock pens. His animals were missing. Only deep claw marks remained on the wooden fence. The villagers gathered around in confusion, whispering nervously. Some said wolves had come. Others swore no wolf could tear through such thick wood. The elder struck the ground with his staff. Do not be fools, it is nothing but nature. We will not speak of curses or shadows. Keep your mouth shut and your eyes on your work. But the fear in his eyes betrayed his words. The human stood near the broken fence. Crouching to study the marks, they were wide and deep, larger than any beast claw he had ever seen. His chest tightened as he remembered the widow's trembling voice. Hunters. Not of this world. That evening, the air grew colder. The villagers locked their doors early, refusing to speak of the missing animals. Yet whispers spread like smoke. Children cried in their sleep. Women clutched their charms. The human felt the tension like a storm pressing on the earth. Unable to ignore the signs, he walked toward the edge of the forest. The trees loomed tall and black against the fading light. He stepped carefully, his eyes scanning the ground. There he saw it. Strange tracks pressed into the soil, not like wolf or bear, but long and uneven. With clawed toes that dug deep, the forest felt alive with silence. Every branch, every leaf seemed to watch him. Then out of the corner of his eye, a flicker. 2 faint lights, glowing in the distance between the trees. His breath caught, he stepped closer, heart pounding. But the lights vanished. Swallowed by the shadows, he turned back quickly, but the image burned in his mind. Glowing eyes. Just as the widow had said. That night the guards at the cellar laughed as they tossed their dice. The mad woman grows weaker, she hardly moves anymore, one said. Soon she'll be no more than bones. The human clenched his fists but said nothing. Instead he slipped away, carrying a small bundle of food hidden under his cloak. He entered the cellar when the guards were distracted. The widow lifted her head weakly, surprise in her eyes as he placed bread and water before her. She ate slowly, each bite painful but life-giving. You saw them, didn't you? She whispered between breaths. The human hesitated, then nodded. Tracks in the soil, eyes in the forest, you spoke truth. They are real, tears welled in her eyes. At last someone believes, but belief alone will not stop them. They come closer with every night, waiting for the moment when fear is greatest. The human's chest tightened. Then why does the elder deny it? Why let the danger grow? The widow's voice hardened. Because to admit the truth would break their fragile peace. They would rather starve me and call me mad than face what hunts them. They think ignorance will protect them. But ignorance only feeds the shadows. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, carrying strange cries that made the guards shift uneasily. The villagers huddled in their huts, whispering prayers they did not truly believe. The human sat beside the widow, her words echoing in his mind. Later, unable to stay still, he returned to the forest edge. The night was darker than before, clouds hiding the moon. Again he saw them, glowing eyes, not one pair but many, blinking in and out of the black, moving slowly, circling the village. His blood ran cold, he wanted to shout, to warn them all, but his voice stuck in his throat. The eyes vanished once more, leaving only the sound of rustling leaves and his own pounding heart. When he returned to the fire where the elder sat, he spoke urgently. I saw them in the woods. There is danger here. The elder's eyes narrowed. Enough, stranger, you speak with her tongue. Do not spread her poison among us. He turned to the others, his voice sharp. Do not listen to him. He is bewitched by the widow's madness, the crowd murmured. Fear mixed with doubt. The human felt their stares pierce him. Some hostile, some uncertain. He realized then that the widow had been right. The villagers would rather believe a lie than face the truth. But in the shadows of the forest the hunters waited, and the signs grew clearer with every passing night. The human knew one thing with certainty. He could no longer walk away. He had been pulled into a struggle far greater than he had imagined. The choice before him was simple yet dangerous. Believe the widow and act, or let the silence consume them all. The night was thick with silence, clouds swallowed the moon, and the air pressed heavy on the village. The human traveler sat near the dying fire, his mind torn between fear and resolve. He could no longer ignore the truth. He had seen the glowing eyes in the forest, the claw marks on the fence, the missing livestock. Every sign pointed to danger, yet the villagers still clung to their denial. He rose quietly, slipping away from the warmth of the fire. His boots crunched softly on the dirt path as he made his way to the cellar. The guards had grown lazy after too many nights of empty watch. They laughed and passed a jug of sour wine between them. The human moved like a shadow, careful not to draw their eyes. The iron lock was cold against his hands. He pressed his ear to the door and heard faint breathing. Weak but steady, she was still alive, his chest tightened. The image of her bruised face and trembling body returned. And his decision hardened. Tonight he would break her chains. He pulled a small blade from his belt, wedging it into the lock. His fingers worked with tense precision. Sweat slid down his brow as the metal scraped. Then with a soft snap, the lock gave way. He eased the door open, the hinges crying softly like wounded birds. Inside, the cellar was dark and damp. The widow lay curled against the wall, her body trembling from hunger. Her head lifted weakly when she heard his steps. Her cracked lips parted. You came, she whispered. Her voice almost gone, he knelt beside her, cutting the ropes that bound her wrists. The skin beneath was raw and torn. She winced but did not cry out. He slipped the sack from her head and let it fall to the dirt. For the first time she breathed freely, her pale eyes glistening with fragile hope. "You cannot stay here," he said firmly. "They will let you starve." "But I will not," her voice broke as she answered. "If you free me, they will curse you too. They will call you mad. They will drive you out." The human shook his head. "Let them. I would rather be cursed for mercy than safe in cruelty." She stared at him for a long moment, and then tears slid down her cheeks. For the first time in many nights, her lips curved into the faintest trace of a smile. He helped her to her feet, her body weak against his shoulder. Together they slipped into the night, their steps careful, their breath shallow. They avoided the guards who now sat drunk and distracted. The village lay still, doors locked, windows shuttered, as if all had agreed to close their eyes to the truth. As they passed her ruined hut, she gripped his sleeve. "Please," she whispered. Inside on the shelf, a small box, my daughter's memory box. "I cannot leave it behind." He nodded without hesitation, entering the broken hut. Dust swirled in the dim light as he searched. At last, he found it. A wooden box carved with delicate patterns. Worn with love, inside were tiny things. A ribbon, a carved stone, a scrap of cloth, tokens of a child now lost. He tucked the box under his arm and returned to her. Her hands trembled as she took it, pressing it against her chest. They moved together toward the forest. But before they reached the trees, a low sound rose in the distance. At first it was only a whisper of movement, but soon it grew, a deep, inhuman growl, rolling through the night air. The widow froze, her eyes wide. "They are here," she breathed. "The hunters." The human gripped her arm, guiding her quickly into the shadows of the forest. The branches closed around them, the darkness thicker. The sound of claws scraping against stone echoed faintly from the direction of the village. They crouched behind a fallen tree, hearts pounding from their hiding place. They saw faint lights between the huts, eyes glowing. Shifting, moving, many pairs, circling silently. The hunters had come. Just as she had warned, the widow's breath shook. Now they will believe, but too late. The human's jaw tightened. His hand rested on the hilt of his blade, though he knew steel alone could not fight such creatures. Yet he felt no regret. He had broken her chains. He had chosen compassion over fear. The hunters prowled closer to the village, shadows stretching across the ground like long fingers. The guards, drunk and unprepared, barely stirred before the darkness swallowed their laughter. The villagers remained in their huts, doors barred, hearts trembling, unaware that denial would not protect them tonight. The widow clung to her box, whispering a prayer to a daughter she might never see again. The human pressed his hand over hers. "Steady and firm. We will fight," he said. His voice steady though his heart raced. "We will not hide like them." In the distance, a scream tore through the night, sharp and short. The hunters had begun their feast. The human's resolve burned brighter. He knew their path was dangerous, but there was no turning back. The chains were broken not just from her wrists, but from the silence that had bound them both. Together they would face the darkness. The scream echoed through the night, tearing the silence apart. The human and the widow pressed low behind the fallen tree, their breaths shallow. The glow of many eyes moved across the village, hunting shapes sliding like shadows between the huts. Their movements were swift, smooth, too precise to be animals. The widow gripped the box against her chest, her pale face glowing in the faint starlight. "They will kill them all," she whispered. "Just as they killed my husband." The human's jaw tightened. His heart beat like thunder in his chest. He had fought soldiers before, but this was different. The hunters moved with no sound, no hesitation, no fear. He whispered back, "If we hide, they will come for us next." "We must act," the widow's eyes widened. "Against them? With nothing but steel? You cannot." The human glanced at her. "You spoke of your husband's things. Did he leave anything, any weapon, any tool?" Her breath caught. She nodded slowly. "Buried beneath the ruins of our old outpost. It is not far. But the path is dangerous." A shriek tore through the night, followed by the crash of wood splintering. The hunters were inside the nearest hut now, and the sound of terrified cries rose only to be cut short. The widow trembled, but she nodded with determination. "Follow me." They slipped through the forest, moving away from the glowing eyes. The widow knew the path well, even in the dark. Her bare feet hardly made a sound. The human stayed close, blade ready, his ears straining for the sound of pursuit. At last they reached a clearing. Half buried under moss and stone lay the remains of a small outpost, broken walls and rusted beams. The widow fell to her knees. Digging with frantic hands at the earth, the human joined her, pulling away rocks and soil until at last she uncovered a metal case, its surface scarred but intact. With trembling hands she opened it. Inside lay a strange device, alien in design, a handle with glowing lines attached to a crystal core that pulsed faintly with light. "My husband's defense weapon," she whispered. "He said it could drive them back. But he died before he used it." The human took it carefully, its weight heavier than it looked. He could feel the hum of energy inside. "How does it work?" She shook her head. "I only know it feeds on courage. His words, not mine, hold it with will, and it will answer." Before he could ask more, the forest shifted, branches snapped, and glowing eyes appeared at the edge of the clearing. The hunters had found them. Their shapes slid forward, tall and thin, with claws that gleamed in the faint light. Their eyes burned like coals. The human lifted the weapon, holding it tight. A surge of heat spread through his arm, and the crystal flared brighter. The hunters hissed, their movement slowing. They circled, testing his resolve. The widow clung to the memory box with one arm and reached for a broken beam with the other, swinging it like a staff. "We cannot let them surround us," she said, her voice trembling but firm. The hunters lunged, shadows leaping from every side. The human swung the weapon, and a burst of light erupted. A wave of force struck the nearest creature, hurling it back into the trees with a screech. The widow cried out and struck another across the head, sparks flying as the creature staggered. The battle raged in the clearing. The human's arms ached as he swung again and again, bursts of light pushing the hunters back. Yet more came, their glowing eyes multiplying in the dark. Their claws tore through stone and wood. Their hiss chilling the blood, one leapt onto the widow, knocking the memory box from her hands. She screamed, struggling beneath its weight. The human turned, rage burning through him. The weapon flared brighter, and with a roar he struck the creature. Blasting it into ash, he helped her up, pressing the box back into her arms. "Hold on. We fight together." Her eyes shone with tears and fire. She nodded, standing beside him as the hunter circled again. The night was filled with shrieks and bursts of light. The clearing became a battlefield. The human's courage fueled the weapon, each strike pushing the shadows back. The widow fought with desperate strength, her broken body moving as if fueled by love and grief. At last the hunters began to retreat, their glowing eyes fading into the forest, their hisses echoing like promises of return. The human stood trembling, the weapon still glowing in his hands. The widow leaned against him, her breath ragged. "They will not stop," she whispered. "This was only the beginning. They hunt until nothing remains." The human looked toward the distant village where faint cries and fire still burned. His jaw tightened. "Then we make a stand. Not for them alone, but for us, for every soul that will fall if we do nothing." The widow stared at him, her eyes full of pain and wonder. In his face she saw not just a stranger, but the one who had broken her chains, the one who now stood beside her against the dark, and in the trees beyond, unseen. More eyes blinked to life. The hunt was far from over. The clearing smelled of smoke and ash. The widow leaned against the human, her body weak but her spirit burning brighter than before. The strange weapon still glowed faintly in his hands, its light pulsing with every beat of his heart. But beyond the trees, more glowing eyes stirred. The hunt was not finished. "We cannot run forever," the widow whispered, her voice hoarse. "They will follow until nothing remains." The human nodded, his face hard with resolve. "Then we make a stand." Together they moved back toward the village. The path was broken with fear and silence. The huts stood in shadows, some doors torn open, others still barred. The cries of earlier had faded into a hollow quiet. It was as if the hunters had stolen not only lives but voices. When the human and widow stepped into the center of the square, frightened faces peered from behind shutters and broken doors. The villagers whispered when they saw her free. Some gasped in anger, others in shame. The elder stepped forward, his staff trembling in his hand. "You dare," he thundered, though fear cracked his voice. "You free the cursed one. You bring danger upon us all." The human's voice rang clear. "The danger was already here. You blinded yourselves to truth. She warned you and you starved her. You called her mad. But she is the only one who saw." The widow lifted her head, her voice thin but sharp as glass. "The hunters are real. They circle even now. You can hide or you can fight, but if you choose silence again, you will die in it, the villagers murmured, fear twisting into confusion. Some clung to the elder's words. Others looked to the human with desperate hope. The elder raised his staff. No weapon can defeat shadows. You speak lies, stranger. You bring ruin. Before he could say more, a roar split the night from the forest. The hunters poured into the square, their glowing eyes burning. Their claws tearing the earth, the villagers screamed. Scattering, doors slamming shut, the elder fell back, his staff clattering uselessly. The human stepped forward, the weapon blazing with sudden light. He shouted, "No more running," and swung. A wave of brilliance burst forth. Striking the nearest hunters, they shrieked, their bodies twisting in the glow before dissolving into ash. The widow stood beside him, gripping her memory box in one hand and a broken beam in the other. Her voice rose above the chaos. Fight with him, or lose everything. For a moment, hesitation chained the villagers. But then a young man grabbed a pitchfork, a woman raised an axe. Others armed themselves with whatever they had. Fear was strong, but the fire of survival burned brighter. One by one, they stepped forward, standing behind the human and the widow. The hunters lunged, but the village no longer cowered. The square erupted in chaos, steel and wood clashing against claws. Screams and cries mixed with shrieks of the creatures. The human struck again and again, the weapon answering his courage with blinding force. The widow fought at his side, her weak body fueled by something greater than strength. The battle was long and brutal. Villagers fell, but more rose to fight. The hunters hissed and recoiled, their perfect hunt broken by unity, by courage, by the choice to resist at last. When the first light of dawn touched the sky, the surviving hunters hissed and fled into the forest, their glowing eyes fading into the shadows. Silence fell heavy, broken only by the ragged breaths of the living. The square was scarred, the ground stained, but the village still stood. The human lowered the weapon, its light dimming. His arms trembled with exhaustion. The widow leaned against him, her eyes filled with tears. "They will return," she whispered, "but now they know, now we know. We can fight them." The villagers gathered, their faces pale with shame. They looked at the widow not with hatred but with guilt. The elder lay on the ground, his staff broken, his voice gone. He had no more power over them. A woman stepped forward, her eyes wet. "We are sorry," she whispered. "We should have believed you. We let fear blind us." Others bowed their heads, voices murmuring apologies. The widow closed her eyes, tears falling freely. For so long she had been called mad, cursed, silenced. Now at last, truth had been heard. Her heart ached with loss, but in the ashes of pain grew something new. Hope. The human spoke, his voice steady. "You must remember this night. You must stand together, not hide. The hunters are patient, but humanity is stronger when united." The villagers nodded. The weight of his words heavy in their hearts, the widow clutched her memory box. Holding it close in her chest burned grief, but also a spark of healing. For the first time in many years, she no longer stood alone as the dawn broke fully. The human looked toward the forest, its shadows still deep. He knew the hunters would wait, watching, testing, but he also knew that kindness, courage, and unity had turned the tide. One man's choice to listen had saved an entire village. The widow raised her head, her voice soft but firm. "You gave me back my voice, and in doing so you gave them a chance. I will never forget." And as the sun rose higher, painting the village in light, the hunters faded deeper into the dark. Defeated but not gone, the war was not over. But a new strength had been born. Humanity had chosen to stand, and that choice had changed everything.